Is it right that everybody receives a payment regardless of whether or not they work? Let's get some thoughts on this. Jonathan Davis is an economist and a wealth advisor. He joins us. Hello, Jonathan.
Hi, Duncan.
Thanks for your time tonight, sir. What do you make of this?
Well, I'll tell you, it's going to happen. Whether it happens within 5 years or 10 or 15 years, it's going to happen because the global elite are talking about it, and therefore it's going to happen. And I can't think of anything more depressing to the human race than the universal basic income. You say it's being tried in Finland. They're going to Sturgeon wants it in Scotland.
She's researching it in Scotland. Yeah, she's paid some cash to research it.
I'll tell you what they're researching. They're researching whether or not they can save money on the civil service and the DWP. And they're going to research the psychology of people receiving money. Well, I can give you the answers to those immediately. You don't have to spend millions of pounds researching it. It's going to save money on public sector, and it's going to initially, as you say in Finland, it's going to reduce people's stress levels.
Yeah.
To which you then ask, well, why am I saying it's the worst thing for the human race?
Why are you saying it's the worst thing for the human race?
Because, unfortunately, the BBC, the media, and people always only look to the short term. They never think about the long-term implications of things like this. First of all, who in their right mind would say no to receiving money free? Of course, everyone will say this is fantastic. I'll tell you what, I'm reminded of Rome burning and Nero playing his harp. Because what's going to happen, whether it's within 25 years or 50 years, in other words, far longer, far after you and I have got anything to do with anything, whether or not we're still alive, it'll be our kids, it'll be our grandkids who will be dependent on the state. And the state will have control over the people.
All right, but you can already argue.
Can I just make one last thing?
No, let me just interject for a second, because I like your point about the state, if that's all right. Because we got a bit of time here, Jonathan, so it's fine. Right? You can already argue that a lot of people are already dependent on the state. What's the difference going to be?
There's a big difference because, as you say, whether you're working, whether you're not working, you're going to be given a lump of money.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked about where's this money coming from. The United Kingdom government already owes, and your listeners will not even be able to get their head round this, it's so big a number.
Yeah.
The United Kingdom government owes £2,000 billion. I mean, it's just an enormous amount of money. We haven't even focused on that. Of course, it's totally different. It will make people totally dependent upon the state. You won't even have to go to the dole office and get your money. You won't have to do anything. As I say, it'll be like Rome burning. You can just imagine people are sitting around in parks on their couches watching Jeremy Kyle doing absolutely nothing.
What's the matter with that? What's the problem with a better quality of life, less stress? Well, hang on.
That's exactly
Let me put a point to you, because I'm desperate to hear your reaction, because I'm interested. What is so wrong with the idea of sitting in the park, not having to work, reducing your stress levels, having a better quality of life, sitting there with a can of super strength lager, watching the birds in the trees, and you get a few quid in your bank account?
Yeah.
Isn't that really what we all want?
Yeah. Do you know, I have a cat already. I don't want to turn into one. I don't want to be a pet of the state. Now, some of your listeners might be very happy for that to happen too, but I'll tell you what, the bulk of people have actually got a rational mind, and they know that if we all degenerate into a society of layabouts and lazy good-for-nothings, then that is the end of civilization.
Okay, all right, let's
I'm not saying it's happening tomorrow,
No, I know
but it will happen in a few decades.
This idea of being the pet or the slave of the state, okay, is really interesting, isn't it? Let me ask you this. Do you not think we're already there? All right, it doesn't matter if you work or you don't work. You have to pay tax according to the law. If you don't pay your tax, they put you in prison. All right, you walk down the street, you're being watched by CCTV cameras. I could go on and on. I could build up a really good argument to say we are already, in this country, if you want to pursue this line, we are already pets of the state. And all this would do is just take it to the next level. But already the state controls pretty much all of the areas of our lives. If I want to drive my motor car without a seatbelt on, I can't. Because I'll get stopped and I'll get points and I'll be fined. So doesn't the state control us already?
Duncan, I'm delighted to hear you saying that. We are imperceptibly, step by step, moving towards the situation that I'm talking about. No, we're not yet there. We're a long way from there. But every step towards that, as I say, is imperceptible. People don't realize what's going on. For example, I've seen economic statistics in the last couple of months that since about 1999, the inflation-adjusted earnings of 60%, the bottom 60% of the population, has either been flat or has actually fallen against inflation. So only the top 40% for nearly 20 years have had earnings above inflation. And indeed, it's the top 10% that's had the bulk of that. So already the bottom 60% are not any better off than they were nearly 20 years ago. And, Theresa May talks about they're just about managing. Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's government and central banking, the Bank of England, which has created this situation. And yes, the more that we take handouts, the more that we become dependent upon the state. For example, the minimum wage. You know, many of listeners will throw their slippers at the radio now. But the minimum wage, let me say to you, the true minimum wage is zero. Because when you bring in minimum wage, do you know what? The year is 2017. There are such things as computers and robots. Go into a fast food joint and see how many computers there are now where you can order your burger.
All right, well, let me pick up on the robots and technology point, and I'm glad you've mentioned that, because doesn't that mean we now need a radical rethink, which you can argue, well, let me just get to the point, which you can argue is one idea could be universal basic income, because if you project 5, 10, 15 years down the line, we're going to have driverless trucks on the roads of this great big country of ours. We're going to have various insurance companies already asked their staff, could your job be done by a robot? Yes. We're going to see a lot of jobs go. We're going to see technology and robots replacing people. If the jobs aren't there, don't we need to start having a radical rethink? And possibly universal basic income is an idea that could work in the future, given how the landscape is changing.
As I say, most depressingly, I think it's what will happen in the future, but it is not the solution. The solution is that we don't become defeatist and accept that there will be millions unemployed. As you say, you talked about Uber and taxi.
But what are they going to do, mate? What are they going to do for work?
Well, that's the point. If only we could become a more competitive economy and we could take jobs from the Far East. If only we moved from being a service economy where we sell legal services, accountancy services, we sell houses, we sell cars. Instead, we actually make things instead of our economy.
But what kind of things? What kind of things do you think we should be making in this country?
Well, you'd be amazed. But there, when I hear, for example, that Foxconn, the manufacturer of iPhones in China, are actually opening a huge manufacturing plant in America, it's very clear to me that we have the logistical capability to transform our economy from being service-based to being manufacturing-based, and we could become the exporting workshop of the West instead of it being from the Far East.
All right, so all of the energies, all of the focus should be on finding new ways of creating jobs in this country, not looking at ideas like universal
No, it's
basic
not
income.
for government to find anything. It's for government to create the conditions that entrepreneurs can get moving, and they will need workers.
Interesting. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for your time tonight. It's Jonathan Davis, economist and wealth advisor.